Welcome to the Research Conversations with the Faculty of Management Sciences. Scholars committed to making impactful societal change through research.
Okay, greetings viewers. My name is Nontuthuko S'lindile and welcome to another edition of Research Conversation with FMS. Well, today I'll be joined by Dr. Nontuthuko Nkwanyana to unpack a PhD project titled Vulnerability of Supply Chain to Risk, an agenda to capacitate the states in South Africa. Well, this show is about scholars committed to make an impactful societal change through research. Dr. Nkwanyana, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, and how are you?
I'm also good. So let's get down into it. The latest Auditor General reports have explicitly revealed that our public procurement system is abysmal. We had 34 out of 257 municipalities that received a clean audit. And last week we had the Auditor General, Takani Malulega, reporting that in KZN, 92%, 50 out of 54 municipalities have received that audit, which means our province is in a dire situation. And right now it's only the Western Cape province that still keep on receiving the clean audits. Which brings me to my first question to say, because when I read your study, I've noticed that you're actually addressing the root cause of this problem. And I can go on to count the figures. But my first question is, what motivated you to conduct this research and align it with the study aims and objectives?
Thank you. Right. As you have rightfully said, when you look around, when you read the reports, especially that of the AGSA, including media publications, you realize that supply chain management, especially its aspects of public procurement system, is not in a good state, right? So what motivated me was that I need to understand and I need to research and get to know what aspects within the public procurement system where the public sector is vulnerable to risks. So that firstly, it was that to say, of course, in media, in AGSA reports, we already know what are the risks that are being documented there. But I wanted to get to the bottom of it to say, in the recent times, during the time when I was conducting my research, are the risks which are already in literature still the same? So I wanted to find out what are the risks that are in the aspect of public procurement. But more to that, I wanted to find out what are their implications on service delivery. If we are saying there are risks of irregular expenditure, fruitless or wasteful, or fraud, corruption, collusion, what implications it has on public service delivery. And more to that, I wanted to then to get or to formulate a framework that which the public sector will use as to be capacitated with, in order for the public sector to know how vulnerable are they on risks, so that they can be in a position to cope and overcome. I wanted to get mitigation strategies that will assist the public sector to cope and overcome the risks that exist.
Okay, so moving on in chapter 2, I've noticed that you went on to analyze the supply chain industry in South Africa and comparing to other neighboring countries in the SADC region, such as Namibia and Mauritius. So can you please unpack the chapter for us and also explain what nuances that you find between these different countries?
Thank you. I went on into my chapter 2. I dealt with legislative frameworks. Mostly I dealt with that of South Africa, where I started by unpacking as to the issue of public procurement system. Where does it emanate? From in that chapter 2, public procurement system comes from the Constitution itself, which is our supreme law of the country, where in section 217 is clear to say when an organ of the state contracts for goods and or services, it must do so in a manner that is fair, that is equitable, that is transparent, that is competitive and cost effective. So that is the base of our public procurement system in South Africa. I can go on and talk about other policies like your Public Financial Management Act, the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, and all other policies. But when you look at all those policies, they draw their mandate from subsection 217 of the Constitution. They emphasize on the fact that when we procure goods and services, we should do so in a manner that saves costs, that is competitive, that is fair to all the persons that are involved in the procurement process. Then, having said that, then I went and looked. Let me just talk to Mauritius, right? Mauritius, I was interested to make a comparison between South Africa and Mauritius, because Mauritius in 2020, it was ranked as #1 country that is best governed. In 2019,
in the continent.
In Africa, out of 54 countries, it was ranked as #1, right? But out of the continent, it was ranked at number 18. So
in the world.
In the world.
18 or
as number 18.
One in the continent.
One in Africa, out of 54, and then number 18 in the whole world.
In the whole world.
So you can see that such a country is, when it is best governed, issues of governance that pertains to public procurement are part of what gets assessed, right? So then I was interested to see how do they do their aspects of public procurement, right? I found out that even in their constitution, the public procurement directives, they are not even in the constitution. They've got a short constitution of about 122 pages, right? But when I looked at the country, I realized that their public procurements emanate from what they call Finance and Audit Act. That is an act that gives the Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Development the mandate that the minister may delegate any duty that pertains to expenditure to anybody. And more to that, it also tells us that even the minister himself may issue instructions that pertains to expenditure management. And I also found that there are two, as much as various institutions perform their own procurement affairs, but they've got thresholds at which they can procure up to, right? After the threshold, there is a central board. For instance, there is a procurement office. The procurement office is like our national treasurer that formulates and guide the procurement process in that country, right? It's a procurement office. That procurement office is headed by the director and two independent people, and these people are not appointed permanently. So they've got a 2-year contract that which they sign, and it can be renewed only for a further period of another 2 years. So after that, a new set of people, they come in and they govern how the procurement affairs should be dealt with. Another aspect to note when it comes to Mauritius is that, so after the threshold, if for instance an institution for a normal procurement process is delegated to only approve up to a threshold of, let's say, 500 rupees, 500,000 rupees, they can only procure up to that amount. And post that, there is what they call a public procurement board. There is a procurement board that is central, wherein if you are an institution and you intend procuring above your threshold that has been given by the minister, you then make an application to that body, and that board will then process or do the administrative. They will procure on your behalf. So those are the controls. That is what I've seen between South Africa as having what in the state which we are at in terms of our procurement, or the governance of our procurement, versus the country that is said to be best performing when it comes to governance.
Yeah, so getting into South Africa right now, because you have explained the system of Mauritius. So in South Africa, we know we have the National Treasury and also other sub-groupings. So maybe because this is an educational platform, for someone who is not in the supply chain industry, can you please explain this term of PFMA and triple PFA, and also this 80 to 20% and 90 to 10% preferred fund system that is using the procurement contract?
All right, thanks. Public Finance Management Act, the PFMA, it is there to govern how the expenditure should be incurred, right? It provides for the roles. It tells us who is responsible for what, right? For instance, it is clear to say there should be an accounting officer, right? Each and every public institution should have an accounting officer who is responsible to ensure that there is a system of public procurement in his or her space that is effective, right? Aside from an accounting officer, there should also be, the PFMA tells us that an accounting officer of an institution may delegate his powers, right? So as much as the mandate has been given to the accounting officer to make sure that the system is in place, there are no fruitless and wasteful expenditures, but such power can be further delegated to officials within his or her institution. That is why there is then a unit called Supply Chain Management, where procurement affairs are happening. Those people are now delegated by an accounting officer to transact or to perform the procurement affairs. Right. More to that now, when we go to Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act is an act of the Republic of South Africa, where the government of the Republic of South Africa said in the past there were injustices wherein certain groups of people didn't benefit from procurement processes. Hence now it instituted this triple PFA. Triple PFA then says that when we are buying, there will be points that will be allocated to the groups of people that were disadvantaged in the past. So you will note that there's been a transition, that the triple PFA, there was a triple PFA of 2017 that was scrapped in 2022. So currently there is a new triple PFA of 2022. So let me just give a short background. So prior to January 2023, where there was now a new triple PFA, when government institutions were doing their procurement, there are 80 points that are allocated for a price. So if the service providers are all bidding, they will give us how much they charge for that specific goods and services, right? And then 80 points will be allocated based on price. So whoever that is the cheapest service provider will then get all the 80 points in terms of price. And all other service providers, they will be ranked against their cheapest service provider. And then they will get their percentage in terms of, their points in terms of price. But more to that, there are 20 points that are kept aside to be allocated for the previously disadvantaged. So before the new regulation of 2022, we used the triple BEE certificate that will tell us what level is this service provider. If a service provider is ranked as level 1, it means they get all the 20 points. If they are ranked below, it will be different points up until there are service providers that don't even get any points, right? But let me talk to the current, because that's what matters. Currently, with preferential, with the PFA 2022, it's still the same, that 20 points are still kept for the historical disadvantaged people. The only difference is that now the Minister of Finance have now decentralized the powers back to public institutions to say, Department of Correctional Services, make your own determination as to which previously disadvantaged persons you want to advance. Department of Agriculture, do the same. Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, do the same. So the powers have been decentralized back to the public institutions themselves to decide. So the accounting officer now decides as to which groups of persons to advance. So you will find institutions where they will say, no, we only have got 4 categories of persons that we want to advance. They will say maybe black persons, they will say women, they will say youth and disabled people. So those will be the group of people they want to advance.
Okay, so quickly, because of the interest of time, now I want to touch a bit on the research, on the literature review and your research methodology. So on the literature review, you've also introduced us into 2 theories, of which is the accident, normative accident theory and the prospect theory. So can you please unpack to us, explain those 2 theories for us, and also explain why you decided to use them?
All right. Normal accident theory, the NAT. That theory acknowledges the fact that systems will have accidents, but the theory itself is geared to support the identification of hindrances within the system. So as much as the system is expected to have accidents or mishaps, but the theory then is capacitated to identify, to say, for instance, in a public procurement system, what are the hindrances in the system? Hence, I realized that it was key for me to make use of that system. And then prospect theory supports decision making, right? So it says that an institution should direct resource. An institution should make a decision of where they want to direct their resources in order for them to achieve the goal that they've set for themselves.
Okay. So now into your research methodology, I actually like how you introduced the chapter when you spoke about the research philosophy. So you have stated that in order for a research process to happen, first there must be a paradigm which gives rise to assumption on ontology, epistemology, and auxology. I know this may sound as big words to a normal person that is not in the academia or postgraduate level, but can you please unpack the chapter for us? And the follow-up question will be, what research paradigm you have adopted into your study?
All right. My research methodology, right? I will just talk to one paradigm, axiology. That one talks to how a researcher conducts himself or herself, right? It is important, it talks to the ethics or integrity of the research itself, as well as how a researcher conducts himself or herself, because there are ethical requirements in a research. So it talks to that, to say it is important that a researcher conducts himself or herself in a manner that is acceptable ethically as well as with integrity. So with myself, I adopted a pragmatic paradigm that rejects the view of a cosmetic paradigm that assumes that there is only one correct answer. But a pragmatic paradigm assumes that a researcher should not conclude based on his or her personal views, but he should consider the views of the participants, because those are the people that are in the industry, and the researcher must ensure that the feelings or how the participants feel is what that must be considered, not what the researcher himself or herself assumes is the correct way.
Okay, so which study population did you choose for your study?
I made use of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, and then the population was all the provincial offices where the procurement transactions takes place.
Okay, and last question, what set of finding and recommendation did you came up after conducting the study?
There were a number of findings. I'll touch on a few, right? I found that there were issues with regards to human capital, right? There were issues with regards to human capital in various aspects. You find that there were insufficient human capital. There were no sufficiently skilled human capital that resulted into the implementation of the public procurement system itself not to be in order, right? And again, there were issues of systems, that the system that was being in use was not user-friendly to support an efficient public procurement system. And also there were issues of it's the system, but plus the policies. It was found that there were too many policies in the space of public procurement that even confused the practitioners in the public procurement space. As a result, hence it was found that there are so many irregular expenditures, because at times the policies that are there are not even known by practitioners themselves. There were issues also of training that was not happening. As much as National Treasury is mandated to capacitate public institutions in terms of the know-how or how to do things with regards to public procurement, but it was found that that aspect was not happening. And with regards to recommendations, it was then recommended, amongst others, it was then recommended that public institutions should relook at their human capital. They should be, they should relook at the entire human capital in terms of how many persons are required to actually perform the business of public procurement and what kind of people that are required. Participants were clear to say there should be people of integrity. It should be people that have got the necessary skills in terms of the experience plus the academic background in terms of supply chain. And more to that, it is also proposed that there should be a system redesign, because currently the system does not support. There are a number of steps for practitioners to get to realize just a single procurement aspect. There are so many red tapes, or there are so many different steps which they find as unnecessary for the process, and they indicate that such steps they hinder the effectiveness of supply chain. Supply chain is not able to respond timely to their clients because of that their system is not okay. And also, lastly, which is very much important, is that the issue of the system, there is also the issue of central supplier database. Central supplier database called CSD is said to be also the hindrance in the public procurement space, because it does not support. It was said that it will be a one system that will be used by all government departments, but it does not rotate. When a service, a practitioner go and download service providers on CSDs, practitioners are still able to pick and choose whoever they want to get quotations from, because CSD itself does not do the rotation which it's supposed to do, so that it can eliminate the issues of fraud and corruption, the issues of favoritism that is happening out there. And lastly, the recommendation is that also there should be policy redesign. There should be, we should look at, as South Africa, we should look at policies that governs the public procurement space. There seems to be too many and too confusing. So at times, they are also in contradiction to each other.
Well, Dr. Nkwanyana, what a lovely study. Thank you very much for your time. Well, viewers, this was Dr. Nkwanyana unpacking a PhD project, and this is the research conversation with FMS. Let's meet again next time in the next episode. I thank you.
This episode was brought to you by the Faculty of Management Sciences.